Hello everyone, welcome to another lesson on how to approach the large knight's enclosure to the start point. So in the previous lesson, we talked about the 3-3 invasion, which used to be the correct move, right? The main downside to this large knight's enclosure is that white in this situation can invade at the 3-3 point and take over the corner territory, even though that is not the optimal move, according to AI. But despite AI, beginners and Q players and all amateur players, I would say, are still encouraged to at least know the variation, right? The difference is not huge and still playable for both sides. So if you missed the previous lesson, please check out the previous video. And in this video, we are going to talk about a few other options for white. And the first one is here on the 5th line. I'm not going to go very deep into it. It is a new AI move. And the second one, we'll talk about the approach. It still exists, right? You can still approach. And our focus will be on B right here, this attachment underneath, right? And we can briefly discuss some of these other moves that we've seen before, like E and F. So maybe I'll cover B, C, E, and F first, and then we'll get to the attachment underneath, which is not a viable option, if you remember, for the small knight's approach. But it is actually one of the optimal moves to approach the large knight's enclosure. So one of the advantages of the large knight's enclosure is that in this pattern, it is much better for black to influence the left side. What do we mean by that, right? So this eliminates moves like the shoulder hit. Why wouldn't white want to play a shoulder hit when it's the large knight's enclosure? Because when black answers this way, this is just a more efficient pattern than something like this, right? We could have similar pattern here, right? Whenever you have a 2-space extension, this is just more efficient than a 1-space extension, right? This is, of course, playable for both sides, but here on the left, it's better for black, right? Because black's shape is more efficient. This is a 2-space extension instead of a little bit over-concentrated 1-space jump, right? So I think that's the main difference here. It is subtle, right? It's not going to make a huge difference in beginners, in Q games, but it is the reason why AI is not recommending that whites play the shoulder hit when it's the large knight's enclosure, right? In case you're wondering. Similarly, moves like this will just turn black into a more efficient shape. And that's why it's not the optimal move. But the downside to this, of course, is that they're further apart, so whites can play above, right? This is kind of threatening. Of course, if black ignores it, then white can come in and cut off these two stones. So I think that's the idea. But this is a pretty advanced AI move, I would say, right? Because it's playing above, meaning that it's giving up territory, right? Black can just play something like this, right? You just remain connected, and white will have to scramble to kind of try to build influence, right, on the upper side, and that's usually very difficult for human players to do, right? This is a 3-on-1. Black's territory is strengthened by number 2 here, right? And maybe this works, right? Number 3, this is threatening to exploit some of the weaknesses, and maybe moves like this, something like that. Maybe not immediately with number 7 because black can cut white off, right? This won't be good. But that's the basic idea, something like this on top, right? And you might see AI play this, but this is not really recommended for human players unless you already have good influence on the outside for white and you really want to play on top. This is your choice. This is the right spot. But when you're thinking of taking the corner territory, thinking about building a base on the upper side, this is not your move. Right? So that is why, let's go back to more accessible, more useful moves, right? That is this approach. This is going to be very similar to the small knight's enclosure. So black kicks, right? Once again, just preventing white from coming in. This is probably the best move here, right? And then you pincer. Then what should white do in this situation? Of course, white should play toward the center, right? You need to escape. You're kind of under attack. And this black shape is a little weak, but you shouldn't probably come in right away. Once again, the idea is that this whole exchange will weaken the two white stones on the outside, right? So black is very happy to exchange the corner territory for more influence on the outside, to put pressure on these two stones, right? So these two stones are bigger in a way than the corner territory. But white does have moves on the outside. Again, this same spot that we just saw earlier, or something like this, right? To kind of just play on top. There's still this 3-3 invasion will still be a headache for black sometime down the line. So this is playable for both sides. What about the pincer? Pincer might be a little worse, right, than the small knight's enclosure or the one space enclosure, because you do want to cut off number one, but now you're giving whites more space, right? Or white might be able to crawl here, right? Something like this. So white will be more comfortable because of the large knight's move. That is why it's not as good, right, as the small knight's enclosure with a one space enclosure where you play the pincer. So in this situation, the kick is better than the pincer. Of course, if the situation calls for the pincer, you should still go for it, right? The idea is for white to take the corner and then black gets influence on the outside. What about the 2-4 and 2-5 invasions or approaches? They are less good, right, than the 2-4, 2-5 invasion when the enclosure is a small knight's enclosure. Why? Because the large knight's enclosure is all about efficiency. So when black gets into this shape, this is going to be better shape than when this stone is one space up, right? It's just going to be more efficient. And what white wants to do is to try to not give black a more efficient shape. Well, white is only on the second line, right? So if you play this, so any of these variations, black is better off having the stone here at C13 rather than at C14, right? So that is why these moves are not as good. Black has a pretty efficient shape, right? Something like this, where you can play this exchange first. And black is just better off having the stone further down here. Similarly, if you play here, then again, remember the very nice capping move is actually right here, right? White just cannot break out, right? Any of these moves will just fail. These will not help either, right? So that is why you don't really consider these moves. Of course, you have more space, but if you get into this, then this is just a better spot for black. Even if something like this, it's still a better spot for black to be in. So that is why you don't usually see the 2-4 or the 2-5 invasions. One thing to note is that black doesn't really have this attachment at number 2 and the cut at number 4, right? Just play this extension, right? This is the better shape. This is already a very good shape for black. If you play here, then this is the best that you can get. But of course, white builds a very solid base here on the upper side. Right, so number 2 is not correct. What if you play this sequence? This is where this stone, right, this large knight's enclosing stone is weaker. This is not as good. White can just follow the script, but black will have to worry about this stone sometime down the line, right? Because there will be all kinds of annoying moves, things like that. So that's why it's actually at the wrong spot. It's better off one space up, right? This is a rare situation where, because black needs to take care of the 3 white stones on the corner, right? So this shape will give black trouble. So if you consult with AI, right, AI always suggests this attachment underneath. So this is actually the key takeaway from this lesson, right? Why does this work when it's the large Knight's enclosure, but it doesn't work when it's the small Knight's enclosure? And the difference is actually very subtle, right? You have to know the why, and once you know the why, you have to decide whether it makes a difference for you, right? Because it does make a difference for AI, doesn't mean it will make a difference for human players, especially beginners and Q players, other amateur players. Right? So according to AI, right, this is just AI's opinion, it is still better for black to play on the outside and allow white to live on the inside than for black to play on the inside and allow white to live on the outside and build a base on the upper side. But it's only a very small difference, right? When the board is empty like this, probably like half a point, right? Half a point as in 6.5 points of Komi, right? That's half a point, 0.5 points. So that's really negligible, right, in amateur games. So it's really your choice, I think, for black. If you're faced with this move, you can guard the corner, right? Guarding the corner this way, white can only extend out, right? White cannot try to play on the inside. Otherwise, white can only crawl and live on the second line like this. Totally unacceptable for white. Right? So white will have to extend out, and black stands down here, right? This descent. Very solid, right? The corners are already alive. And this large knight's move is a nice extension, right? So now whites can just play the 3-space extension, right? Why can whites play a 3-space extension right away? Because black has this invasion, right? But white will have to scramble a little bit. White can either play this exchange and kind of play on top of number 6, right? Black, of course, can play away at this point and see how the fight elsewhere develops before it tries to play off of number 6. And if black ignores, right, this is a real possibility, right? So number 6 invades, number 8 can actually just cut off number 5 from these 3 white stones. But whites can always escape toward the center. So it's not a huge concern, right? Not a huge concern for whites, something like this. And black still owes a move here, right? If you ignore it, then white can come down here, and black will have to scramble in the corner. The corner is cut off, and this stone is also cut off, right? So it will be something like this. It will be a fight. White can also try this move, right? So black will have to hane this way, right? If you hane here, then again, white will just push, play here. Then this is not a good shape for black. You do cut off number 5 here, but white's shape is actually really good, right? You still owe a move here at number 16. So white's in a pretty good shape, very strong, and black's shape is not optimal. So that's why you don't have number 8. You play this hane instead, right? So this way, white is giving up these 2 stones, right? Sacrificing these 2 stones. But if it captures number 8, then that's also not bad, right? That's also not bad. So this is an exchange that white is happy to make under most circumstances. And that's number 7, right? So that's why white is not afraid of this invasion, I think. Right? Something like this with this. But of course, white can play this bend first, right? Kind of threatening with this Atari, which is a very big move. So if black plays here, now white can extend. If black plays on the upper side, now white will get to play this first, and then play something on the outside. And black still owes a move here, or here, right, to connect from the corner. So this is playable for both sides. And that is all you need to know about number 2, right? Playing the hane on the inside, guarding the corner, white builds a base, or there might be a fight when black comes in, right? Once again, I think I mentioned this before, why doesn't white play a 2-space extension here? Because when black plays the pincer, white will come under attack, right? White doesn't have the flexibility of giving up these 2 stones in exchange for influence. So this actually limits white's ability to maneuver. Of course, it won't be difficult to make a living shape, but you still need to spend relatively inefficient moves, right, to try to build out eye space, to try to seek 2 eyes. And white will be very passive once black plays the pincer at number 6. Right? Whereas, if you play here, now you're not afraid of the pincer. This is a much bigger base, much stronger base than the 2-space extension. Right? So, I think once you understand this, you understand why it's at number 5. Takes a little while, especially for beginners and Q players, to understand why it's here instead of a 2-space extension. Okay, so let's now talk about the hane on the outside. So this is playable for white, whereas in the small knight's enclosure, this is not playable for white, right? So what's the main difference? The main difference is that, right, this is the standard variation. White plays the 3-3 points, and now what does black do? Black has to stand down here, right? You have to stand down here. You cannot play a number 4, right? This will be the equivalent of black blocking in the wrong direction that we saw last time, right? This is the equivalent of blocking a number 2 when white plays the 3-3 invasion, and this is not good. Why? Because once again, this stone is at the wrong spot. It's not the right spot. So you cannot go to that variation as black, so you have to stand down here. Very good move, very, very solid. And there will be this, what we call in English, a monkey jump at b19, right, to reduce the eye space. So white will have to try to live, right? White will have to try to live because the eye space here is really in danger. So it plays the number 5 and number 7, increasing eye space. And this is where I think you have to decide as an amateur player whether you want to pull this off or whether you want to risk this, right? So the AI move here is to cut. But the risk, of course, is that the corner is still not alive. White still owes a move on the corner, right? This is not going to be alive. But white does have a ton of liberties, right? So the idea for AI is that AI is not afraid of being killed locally or even being killed eventually. But what AI is going to do is to use number 11 to build influence on the outside and to threaten all these black groups on the outside, right? So it's this quadrant is relatively empty, then right away, right, we see all kinds of opportunities for white. And I think black probably won't be able to save number 2 and 4, right? Because the corner has a ton of liberties for white. Right? And it's something like this, once again, this would just be a really tough fight for black right off the bat here. Right? So that is why when the board is relatively empty, number 11 is threatening, right? Because black does have 2 cutting points on the outside. So that is why it's better under most circumstances for black to try to take care of at least one group, right? In this case, these 2 stones on the left side. Now whites can connect here. Now the corner is alive. We'll take a look at it in just a second. And black owes a move on the outside, and white gets sente, right? So this is the standard Joseki, we can say, for the attachment underneath at number 1 and the hane on the outside for black at number 2. So this is the standard pattern. What's the difference? If you compare this to what we saw earlier, so that would be something like this, right? It's worth reviewing because it is pretty important So first of all, white still needs another move here. So black gets sente here on the upper right, whereas white gets sente on the upper left, right? So that's the difference number one. And second of all, the wall for black on the upper right is much more robust, right? This cutting point basically doesn't exist, right? Especially if the ladder works. Even if it doesn't work, then it'll be very difficult for white to cut here and start a fight. Whereas in the upper left, we have number 11 already cut, right? And white can pull it out, right? When the time is right, right? So white at least already has a stone here, cutting black. And that makes a huge difference as well in terms of the strength of black's wall. Right, there are other variations that we saw, something like this. This is going to be very similar, right? Something like this. Again, the wall is just much more solid than having a cutting stone already on the outside. Right, so I think that's the difference. You need to know why white can play the attachment underneath in this situation, but not when it's a small knight's enclosure. So what about the life and death here? So white can safely ignore the corner, but black will be able to come in this way. Right? White just spews out the pattern this way, and this will be a seki, right? If black chooses to go, black will be in gote, white has sente, but black does destroy any point that white potentially has, right? 4 or 5 points here. This is going to be seki. White will be alive, but no points. But white does get sente. So this will be an endgame move, right? This will be a pretty big endgame move. If black plays this sequence, then white gets no points. But if white gets to play here first, then the whole corner, right, is white's territory. Right? So that's going to be almost 10 points, about 8 or 9 points. So this is the standard Joseki. We can take a look at a couple other variations. Right, that's number 3, coming into the 3-3 point. What about this? This is a trick move, kind of. Right, you might be thinking just pressing whites down to the second line. It's actually not correct. We've seen this before, actually, without the large knight's enclosure, just the start point, and then white attaches at the 3-4 point. This is actually not going to work for black because white can cut at number 7. And what happens now is that, once again, black will need a move at number 12. And when white gets on the 4th line this way, this is actually not bad for white at all, right? You're just sacrificing the corner territory in exchange for a very, very good base here on the upper side. So this is actually good for white, especially if you're able to atari twice, right, and get on the 4th line here. Of course, black, if you give up the corner this way, then this is not great, right? Not great for black, right? Compare this wall with the wall that we just saw, right? You're giving up the corner territory, but it's still pretty big. The capture rate situation here is when black plays number 14, white can stand down here, right? And black will be dead. You can try out some of the variations on your own, right? Shouldn't be a problem for white. So number 15 is has a better score than right here, right? This also has a good score. I don't know exactly the difference. I think black will have 16 and 18 no matter what you do, right? But it does have a higher score. So remember, standing down here is the correct move in this situation. And of course, black can play at number 16 too. But overall, this is not bad for white because of the corner territory. So that is why, right, you have to be a little careful. You cannot play number 6. The correct move in this situation is for black to connect right here, right? Or, of course, black can connect here right away. But this gives white the option of coming into the corner. But, of course, black shouldn't be afraid of moves like this. Just enclose it, and this white most likely still owes a move on the inside, and black's wall on the outside is fine. Right? But if I were playing, I would play the Atari first. I would not give up the corner that easily, and now I think white will have to come out, right? Come out this way. And black can put white under attack, right? So that is something to consider when you play number 3, right? This whole group is under attack. You may or may not want to play this. Or you might be able to cut here, right? Depending on the ladder, right? If this ladder favors white, then white might be able to play the cut at number 9. Right? And if this ladder, this will be a squeeze, right? So black should also calculate this ladder, right? That's a little complicated, but both ladders should be calculable. Right? And if neither works in black's favor, then black can actually just play on the outside. White will have to capture, right? White cannot escape. If you escape, then this is 3 liberties versus 2, and white will be killed. But white can capture here, and black can only capture on the outside. But this is now 3 versus 3, right? So white will be able to take the corner this way. Right? A little confusing, but black does get 2 panukis on the outside. So this is also playable for both sides. But of course, if I were white in this situation, I would not bother with playing here on the second line. Just a little too risky, right? Might be coming under attack, might be kept on the second or third lines, and it's not a good feeling. Lastly, we can talk about this move, right? This is actually not the optimal move. You might be thinking, right? Of course, if we get to this situation again, right? This seems very similar, right? This will favor white once again. So if you're black, you need to be careful. Just play on the inside. This is actually how this works. Just play on the inside like this. And now the wall is very strong, right? Number 9, it has a cutting point, but it's actually very hard to escape or initiate a fight from number 9's position, right? So this will favor black because of the strength of the wall and the position of this cutting stone, right? These all matter when AI is giving out suggestions, right? So, and that is how we are evaluating all these different variations. So that's number 3, right? You need to be a little careful, right? It's tempting, right, to play moves like this, but you're not going to end up benefiting. Also worth mentioning is standing down, right? Standing down, I think this is threatening to probably make an exchange on the outside, but black should stay firm, right? And just allow white to live on the corner, but black's wall, once again, is fairly strong on the outside. So number 3 is not the optimal move for white. The optimal move in this situation, once again, is to play the 3-3 point. Black stands down here, very important. And white most likely will get to play the cut. And number 13 will ensure the corner is alive. And black owes a move, right? Because now these 3 stones are very short on liberties. There's still a cutting point, and black needs to take care of the cutting point. And this is the AI Joseki for number 1, the attachment underneath to the large knight's enclosure to the star point. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section below. And I'm always happy to explain a little more. Thank you for watching.